You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Cait Malhiot, attorney at Marko Law in Detroit, Michigan, focusing on plaintiff side employment litigation, defending the rights of working people and their civil rights. How are you, Cait?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on.
I didn't have a choice.
Oh, well, okay then.
I'm happy to be here.
Oh, all right. Well, that works too. Big shout out to Marko Law. We've had a few of the Marko Law associates on our podcast, and including John Marko, great attorney in Detroit, Michigan. So I want to just give him a little shout out there. So, Cait, let's just start. Tell us where you're from.
I'm from Michigan, from the Metro Detroit area.
Okay.
From Heartland.
From where? Say that again.
Heartland. It's about 20 minutes north of Ann Arbor.
Okay, very good. So growing up, we haven't featured you on Lawyer Stories, which is our Instagram and LinkedIn and our Facebook. But growing up, being a lawyer was always like a realistic option for you. But you always said you're going to be like a lawyer or like a Power Ranger or something like that, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I haven't given up yet on being a Power Ranger.
All right, very good.
I could still moonlight, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I always knew that I was going to be either a meteorologist or a lawyer, a writer or a lawyer. It was always something else or a lawyer that, the something else was just, fantasy play acting. But I knew as long as I can remember that I was eventually going to be a lawyer.
Okay, very good. So tell us about your experience in Spain and why you ended up back in Michigan practicing law. There's a long story about this Spain thing.
Yeah, I almost didn't come back. I went to Spain my junior year of undergrad. I stayed there a year. I wanted to, stay there. I'm like, this is great. I'm having an amazing time. The people are amazing. The lifestyle's amazing. I was already signed up to take the bar exam. So I was like, okay, I'll come back and take the test. I'm already signed up. I didn't study for it. I don't think I even knew what was on it. I just went and took it because I was signed up and went back to Spain. And I got my results, and they were pretty good results. Like, okay, well, since I got these results, I might as well apply to some law schools. Doesn't mean I have to go. Just means,
Right.
I'm going to apply because I have these results. I don't want them to expire. And then I got a bunch of scholarship offers. So I ended up coming back because I didn't want to, waste that opportunity.
Right. Okay. So then what was your law school experience like?
It was pretty easy. Went to University of Illinois. The people were great. The professors were great. It was not at all cutthroat or stressful. You just got to sit around and read cases, talk about law, talk about theory. It was kind of fun.
Really? So nothing challenging for you, like getting called on or being under the gun or exams? You didn't find any of that difficult?
Well, I took torts my first semester of 1L year, and the teacher used me as the example of who's not a reasonable person when it came to the reasonable person standard. So that was,
Nice.
probably realistic. She must have
She must have known. I guess she knew you. Okay.
She must have, yeah.
All right.
So that wasn't, my favorite experience, but now I'll never forget that I'm not the reasonable person when they talk about the reasonable person standard.
Really? Okay. So anything that stands out about law school besides being the unreasonable person?
I would say, I had some really great professors, and that I think made more of a difference than the classes. I had an amazing professor, Professor Kaplan, for income tax, which is not a class that I would have expected to be all that interesting. And he was so dynamic and engaging that he made everybody love income tax. I had a great professor for trust and estates. He was obsessed with zombies, Professor Ross. So he would always talk about, take a regular trust and estate hypo and then say, but what if, the property owner here happens to be a zombie? Like, well, I don't know, Professor Ross. What if? It's not in anywhere in the case book, but it was fun. I had some really great professors who really made the whole experience really enjoyable.
Okay, wow. All right, very good. So, what advice would you give for law students today?
Um, I would say if you're considering law school, make sure you know what it is. And if you want to be a lawyer, make sure you have a realistic idea of what that is. It's not what you see on TV. And if it's something you genuinely like, something you genuinely enjoy, it's a lot easier. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot less stressful because you're doing something you love.
Okay, that's good advice. I like it. So, why employment law?
I, I'll tell you the truth, but it's really, really cheesy. And it's just that I want to help people.
Okay. Well, I mean, you do that in the capacity of civil rights and personal injury over at Marko, right? So, was there a reason, like specifically, was there something in lifetime that happened, or was it just sort of where you ended up? And that's quite okay. I mean, everybody sort of sometimes they just end up like somewhere by chance.
Well, sure. Well, I really love teaching. In undergrad, I had a few teaching jobs. I taught in the third grade. I taught ballroom dance. I taught English when I was in Spain. I taught LSAT after I took it my senior year of college. And doing plaintiff side employment law, I'm teaching people about their rights. People already know if you're in a car crash, you have a case. You sue your insurance, you sue the other car. That's known. Most people don't really know much about the rights they have as employees. When your employer does something wrong, what can you do about it? What recourse do you have? So something I love about my job is not just that I'm helping people, I'm teaching them. I'm teaching people who may not have realized something wrong happened. Hey, this is wrong. We can do something to help you. You have options here.
Okay, that's very good. So, what is it about Marko Law that, or how long have you been at Marko, and do you feel that they do things differently? Like, what is it about Marko Law?
I've been here since January of 2022, so over a year and a half. We get a lot of interesting high-profile cases, cases where really horrible things have happened to people. And one thing I like about it here is that everyone genuinely cares, even on days when people are stressed or something's going on in their personal life. They may not be in the best mood. Everyone here really, truly cares about getting the best results and helping our clients and really doing the best we can for people who've been wronged.
Okay, and John is very passionate too about what he does. Has he been a mentor for you along the way, and does he mentor some of the associates? Would you say?
Yeah, he's very dynamic. He's great in court. He's great with the jury. Very I don't know how to say it, quick on his feet. Like he can adapt quickly in a courtroom setting and adjust his strategy as needed.
Okay. So, as an employment lawyer, did you see any type of shift in the workplace during COVID? Would you say, like, not necessarily like your workplace, but like, were there any cases? Like, what was the most common thing that came out of other like businesses, and like, what did you see as a shift? A
Well,
trend?
it was huge. I mean, COVID is what ultimately led to me coming to Marko Law because employment law cases, nobody was working. It slowed down. People who were laid off for COVID, that wasn't illegal. A lot of people went through a lot of hardship where there wasn't anything we could do. And when people were working at home, there wasn't a lot of employment law going on. The courts were essentially closed. Criminal cases, of course, took precedent. So all of our cases were put on the back burner. It really put a huge pause on employment litigation for a while back in 2020 when it hit.
Okay. Do you,
Since then, I got a ton of calls about vaccines. People thinking this is, the new frontier. What are the laws about employment law and vaccines? And the truth is, we already had 100 years of law on this because COVID vaccines are vaccines like anything else. Like when people don't want to get a flu shot or other vaccines. So that law was already in place, but it became a lot more relevant. I got a lot more questions about how to handle things like religious accommodations when it comes to vaccines.
Okay. Are you still seeing that today, or has it like really slowed down?
Every now and then there's a vaccine question, but not much more than I used to get all the time with the flu vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Things are different. More people are working remote, and that changes things.
Okay.
You get a lot more sexual harassment via Zoom than we used to see before COVID.
Is
So
that
those are,
right? I mean, I know there was like an issue on CNN, but like what's
it's not as prevalent, but before COVID, I hadn't really seen, I mean, you'd have a boss sending dick pics or something, but Zoom's just sort of changed a lot of how these cases are, more than anything, not just sexual harassment, but how people interact with their coworkers.
yeah.
There's a lot more that's tracked. Email discoveries become a lot more important because people are emailing more than talking in person compared to pre-COVID.
Okay. Interesting. Um, yeah, I really think it. Do you think people want to work at home more instead of like now that they realize they don't need to go into the office? Do you think that's like a big thing with COVID? Like they just want to stay home?
It is, yeah. A lot of people want to do remote work or hybrid work. A lot of the cases or potential cases I look at have that as some sort of component. People expect remote work more than they used to. There are a lot of cases having to do with, I didn't get the remote schedule I wanted, or I have a disability, I can't be in the office, and people see remote work as a more accessible option than they used to. That's an accommodation that they're more likely to expect now than before because it's become so common. So it's come up a lot in ADA cases, discrimination, retaliation type cases about getting favorable treatment when it comes to remote work, things like that.
Right. So have you commenced a discrimination case? Like a few of them or many?
Yeah, I've been doing this since 2012. I've done a lot, yeah.
Okay. So does discriminate what do you need? Do you have like the elements for like if somebody wants to claim discrimination,
Sure.
what are you looking for?
So discrimination is when somebody is treated less favorably or suffers an adverse action based on inclusion in a protected class.
Okay.
So under Title VII, which is the federal law, that's race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. Michigan law, where we are, has something called the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, which expands Title VII because it's race, color, religion, sex, national origin. It also includes age, height, weight, and marital status. Federally, you have the ADEA, the Age Discrimination in Employment Law, which also prohibits discrimination on the basis of age. You have the Americans with Disability Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. USERRA, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of military status. GINA, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of genetic information.
Okay.
So basically what we're looking at is, was this person treated worse because of something protected?
Gotcha. Okay. So do you have any, when it comes to this, do you have any memorable cases? I know you probably, most of them are, but is there any specific ones you want to tell us a little bit about?
Sure, discrimination specifically?
Yeah, or any case that you're
Yeah. I mean, I've probably litigated every kind of employment law claim there is. Anything you can discriminate against somebody for, I've done it. Not
Yep.
discriminate. I didn't do the discrimination. I've done the
Yeah,
case.
I got you.
I've done a lot of sexual harassment. That's still happening. COVID didn't eradicate sexual harassment cases. I've done a lot of disability cases, breach of contract, medical leave. My personal favorite is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which
Okay.
is unfair pay practices. It's not as exciting and dramatic as your discrimination and sexual harassment and disability cases, but I get to make spreadsheets, so that's
Nice.
always fun.
Sounds like a good time. I have a feeling you're serious about that too.
I'm very serious about my
Nice.
spreadsheets.
That's great. So, all right, any memorable case? We asked you that. So, like, what advice can you give somebody who wants to go into civil rights law?
I would say you have to have kind of a thick skin. You hear terrible things every day, and you have to have empathy for people and want to help them, but you have to be able to do that without letting it affect you too much. I've helped so many people who've been sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, raped, and children who've been hurt, really terrible things. And you have to want to help them, but if you get too emotionally invested, you're not doing the best job you can advocating for them. You can't be sitting there crying while you're writing the facilitation summary. When you're defending your client in deposition, you have to be the one who's strong in protecting them while they're going through something very emotional. So you need a balance of caring, but also being able to sort of set those feelings aside and be strong for your client.
Okay. Do you ever deal with any unions or anything like that?
I do. I don't really do labor law.
Oh, that's
It's
more labor law.
separate.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
All right.
I deal with a lot of people who are in unions, so I've had to work with unions. There's a lot of overlap. Somebody might have a discrimination claim that's also a violation of the collective bargaining agreement. If you say, I'm going to go and fire all of the Latino workers in the plant, you're violating Title VII, the discrimination law, but you're also violating the union's collective bargaining agreement. So you're going to be coming at it from both sides. You're going to have to cooperate with the union.
Got it. So what's the biggest mistake an employer can make that gets them sued?
Not talking to their lawyer.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, not go running things through HR, acting impulsively and emotionally.
Like, do you see stuff that like you kind of just shake your head at, like employees,
I've seen
employers
so
just
much,
yeah,
so much stupid stuff. Yeah, one of the first depositions I ever took, 10 years ago, I had a race discrimination and retaliation case. My client worked for this, smallish company, maybe 20 people, and he was the first African-American employee they ever hired.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody who worked there was extremely racist, used a lot of racial slurs against him. He kept complaining about this person. They said, that person's been here forever. Between him and you, we're going to let you go. And they fired him. So I was deposing the owner. And I asked him if he thought that my client's race was going to be an issue, being the first African-American there. And the owner said, no, I knew it wouldn't be an issue. I said, oh, how did you know it wouldn't be an issue? He said, well, before he was hired, I went around and I asked everybody there, do you have a problem working with a Black man? And I said, oh, and what would you have done if somebody would have said, yes, I have a problem? He said, oh, then of course I wouldn't have hired him.
Wow.
And he doesn't have HR.
Crazy.
He doesn't have a lawyer. He thinks he's doing the right thing. And
That's unbelievable. Was that in Michigan somewhere?
that was in Michigan. Yeah.
What year was that? Like 1964?
No, it was within the statute of limitations. So
I'm just kidding, but that's
about 2012, and you'd be shocked at the things people say and do. And we have cases where people use all sorts of racial slurs. They leave nooses. They leave racial imagery around.
Gosh.
Really, really horrific things that are still happening today.
Oh, disgusting.
Yeah.
So, Cait, why do you hate the show Suits so much? I read that, and I mean, I don't, I have no opinion either way. I watch that thing, and all they're doing is, it seems like they yell at each other when it's dark in the city, so it looks like they're working at 3 a.m. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but why do you hate the show so much?
Oh my goodness, Suits it's just so unrealistic. So everyone has been telling me for years to watch Suits. They say it's what you do, just like Suits. And I said, I'm not going to watch Suits. Finally, just about a month ago, I caved and I watched the first episode of Suits. And of course, it happened to be a sexual harassment episode. And that's my thing. I've done more sexual harassment trials probably than any other type of case. And so they meet this client. The next day, they're taking a deposition, I think. And then that night, they have to quickly finish. They get this whole case resolved in like 3 days.
Right. And they go like this too. They're like, oh, let me just read the discovery here. Yep, you've got them on that, right? Like they just
the surprise witness, because judges totally allow that.
Right.
All of that stuff. Yeah. So it gives people a lot of unrealistic expectations. I tell every client now when I start talking to them, look, I finally watched Suits. It's not like that. Before I used to say it was not like Law and Order, but now I tell them it's not like Suits. Because it can be a very slow process and a frustrating process, and not a very glamorous, dramatic process at times. When I'm looking through stacks and stacks of paper, I'm not out in the, what, you said they're in the street at 3 a.m. screaming at
Oh
people?
no, they're just in their office in like a high rise in like
Okay.
whatever city, and you can see in the back, the city is dark. So it makes it look like they're screaming at each other at like 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's it is what it is. It's um, they got to make it seem it's dramatic, right? It's dramatized. Okay, so next question. So this is kind of an interesting thing. I think a lot of people sort of overlook is when there's maybe a male figure who does have like a sexual harassment claim, or if he's, I guess, society deems him like brave enough to bring that
Right.
forward. So I read, some of what you've written about. You had a case recently with a male police chief who was actually the plaintiff in a sexual
Yeah.
harassment, like retaliation case. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. That case went to a jury trial in May, so that's all public record. A
Nice.
lot of people, when they think sexual harassment, the first thing they think is like a young sort of secretary entry level type powerless woman and a much more powerful man. And that happens. I've had
Right.
more man harassing women sexual harassment cases than anything else, but I've seen every combination, and men can be victims of sexual harassment. And even men who you wouldn't expect. In this case, the chief of police, a very successful, strong, powerful man who's doesn't at all seem like someone you'd look at and think, oh, he's a sexual harassment victim. He's what I picture when I think sexual harassment victim. But he was sexually harassed by his male supervisor. He made a complaint about it. He said,
Wow.
I need to make a complaint about how I'm being treated. And then he was fired for trying to enforce his own rights, for trying to speak up for himself and saying, hey, I don't need to be sexually harassed. I shouldn't be sexually harassed at work.
Wow.
Are
Excuse
you
me.
okay?
Yeah. No, that's crazy. So keep go on, go on. Tell us a little bit more.
Okay.
So this was a male. This was a male, um, and a male. I don't even know if I want to know what like went on. Really, like what
Well,
kind of things
so
he
the
said.
main, right, the issue that we brought to the jury was retaliation. Was he fired because he made a complaint of sexual harassment? And, they tried to make excuses. They said that he was fired because he mishandled an investigation 2 years earlier. And of course, the defense witnesses contradicted each other. They contradicted themselves. They said things that were demonstrably untrue. They said he
Yep.
violated the evidence policy. There was no evidence policy. They said we made the decision to fire him on this day. The records show they made the decision to fire him on that day. They were lying. They really quickly came up with an excuse to fire him because he spoke out and he said, I'm going to make this sexual harassment complaint. And the
Wow.
jury saw that. The jury was able to see through their lies, to see all of their inconsistencies, to see that my client was, a good guy who tried to do what he was supposed to do and speak out because something was happening.
What? How do we find out what was happening?
Well, in this case, more than anything, it was about the credibility of the witnesses. And there were multiple witnesses. My client is not the only one who complained about this harasser.
Okay.
We brought somebody else who also came forward and said, I'm being sexually harassed by him, and submitted a complaint about sexual harassment. My client
Another
was
male or a female?
he was harassing everyone.
Okay.
There were complaints from men and women.
Wow. Crazy. Okay. So you said that's out with the jury, like, or it's
No,
being.
no, that case is resolved. The jury returned a verdict in our favor of over $1.2 million.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's unbelievable. So, um, can you tell us about some like lawyer stereotypes and misconceptions that people see that you've seen in the courtroom?
Absolutely. And I think that trial that I was just talking about, the one of the police officer in May, is a great example. Um, I think a lot of people, particularly maybe some new young lawyers who don't know better, think that a lawyer has to be very aggressive, has to yell a lot, be angry. And that's not always true. There's certainly times when that's called for and appropriate, but you can advocate zealously for your client without screaming, without fighting with the other side. You can do it in a professional, respectful way. You can engage with the jury like a person. You can smile with them. You can make jokes with them. You can just be a normal person and still very clearly show them, this is what happened, this is what's wrong, here's the evidence to support that. You don't have to be a bully to present your case well. And in fact, juries don't like bullies. They want someone they can relate to and they can trust. And I think a lot of lawyers try to be that strong TV bully, and that's not always the best way to go.
Right.
In fact, the only depiction of law in media that I think is any good, the only one that I like, way better than Suits, is that the movie My Cousin Vinny. Have you seen that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
it's amazing. And that's by the end, when he's questioning the old woman, he's very nice. He's very gentlemanly, and that's the best that Vinny does in the trial, is when he's being calm, and not just aggressive without any reason for that aggression. Yeah. There's times when you need to be aggressive and, maybe raise your voice, you show more force, but not all the time.
Totally agree with you. So like, what advice would you give young women in the courtroom who are going into trial, maybe against what is deemed an old boys club? Like, what advice would you give young women?
It's harder. It's like the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers thing. When when it comes to writing, you're going to be treated the same as anybody else, I would hope. But when you're in front of a jury and even some judges, there is a bias there. Hopefully not a conscious bias, but women are looked at differently, judged differently. You're doing everything that they're doing, but backwards and heels.
Yeah.
So it's something to be aware of, and to not try to act like a man, not try to do what you see other men do that are successful. You have to be doing what works for you. You have to be very prepared. You have to know your facts in your case, and you have to not try to act like anybody else. You have to present the case as yourself as best you can.
Got it. I love that. So what advice we gave advice for law students, advice for young women in the courtroom. How about a young lawyer just starting out?
I'd say make sure that you're in a practice area that's the right fit for you.
Okay.
I have 2 kids. I know you have 2 kids too. They're young. I'm a single mom. I want to spend more time with them, and my job is demanding, especially when I'm in trial. I don't get to spend as much time with them as I'd like. So for me, this is the right fit for me, because it's important to me that I'm doing something I care about, that I'm doing something that helps people, that makes a difference. And that's how I push through those long hours, not being with my kids when I'm preparing for trial, things like that. But for somebody else, that might be criminal defense. Maybe criminal defense is what makes you feel fulfilled, or estate work, whatever is the best fit for you. And to make sure it's something you truly enjoy and are passionate about, so that you enjoy it, that you feel good putting in that time in the work.
Totally. Good advice. Is there anything else about your practice that you'd like to share? Over at Marko Law, you guys having a good time there, or what? Like, you guys work hard. I mean, I see John on his his Instagram. I see what he's doing, and like, he's got a podcast now. Congrats, John. Shout out to Cases Gone Wild, and excuse me. So big shout out to you guys over there in Michigan.
Thanks. I guess just what I would say is that if people don't know whether to call or not, they should call. It's free. It's better to find out. Like I said, a lot of what I do is educating people about their rights, and it's a free, quick, confidential call. And if you don't know, ask. We're here. We might say you don't have a case, but at least you'll know. Sometimes people wait around. They call us years later, and we say, okay, but the statute of limitations has passed. It's too late. We can't do anything. So anytime someone has a question and they don't know if they have a case or not, they should just call and find out. At least get the information, and then decide where to go from there.
Good advice. Cait Malhiot, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate your time. And if there's nothing else today, I will just say to everybody, thank you for tuning in. Cait, stay right there. And wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves.